The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council fell silent as the emergency alert flashed across the massive holographic display. The ancient weapons system, dormant for thousands of years in the dangerous Gamma sector, had suddenly activated. Its energy readings were off the charts, threatening to destabilize the entire region. High Counselor James Turner, the human representative, watched as his alien colleagues shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The Gamma sector was notorious for its unpredictable radiation storms and gravitational anomalies. Even the bravest spacers avoided that region of space. "We need immediate action," declared First Speaker Marcus, his crystalline form glowing with concern. "The weapon's power signature grows stronger by the hour. Our predictions suggest it could trigger a chain reaction that would affect dozens of inhabited systems." The warrior races were the first to be called upon. The mighty lions of Proxima, known for their fearless battle tactics, declined immediately. "The radiation would interfere with our battle sense," their representative growled. "It would be foolish to send our warriors into such conditions." Next, the Steel Claws, famous for their bold space marines, also refused. "Our honor demands direct combat. This mission requires different approaches," their commander stated, trying to hide his discomfort. One by one, the supposedly brave races of the galaxy found reasons to step back. Some cited technical difficulties, others claimed prior commitments. A few were at least honest enough to admit they feared the unknown dangers of the ancient weapon. In the corner of the chamber, Captain Tom Reed of the Earth exploration vessel Prudence sat quietly, taking notes on his tablet. As a human observer to the proceedings, he wasn't expected to contribute. After all, humans were known throughout the galaxy as the cautious species, the ones who always insisted on safety protocols, backup plans, and risk assessments. Perhaps, High Counselor Turner suggested carefully, this situation requires a more measured approach than brute force. The chamber erupted in murmurs. First Speaker Marcus turned his crystalline head toward the human section. "Are you suggesting your people would be willing to undertake this mission?" Turner looked at Captain Reed, who nodded slowly. "We would need to conduct proper surveys first," Reed said, standing up, "and we'd have to implement extensive safety protocols. But yes, we believe we can help." Laughter echoed through the chamber. The representative of the Steel Claws sneered. "The cowardly humans. What will they do? Conduct safety inspections while the weapon destroys our worlds?" Reed remained calm, pulling up preliminary data on his tablet. "According to these readings, rushing in without proper preparation would be suicide. We've analyzed similar energy signatures before. We have experience with radiation shielding and automated probe systems." "The humans have a point," First Speaker Marcus intervened. "Their cautious approach has served them well in other dangerous situations." Turner stepped forward. "The Earth exploration vessel Prudence is already equipped with the latest in protective technology. Captain Reed and his crew are experts in handling unknown threats. While others see our caution as cowardice, we see it as wisdom earned through centuries of exploration." The chamber grew quiet as the implications sank in. They were out of options. The mighty warrior races, for all their boasting, had stepped back. Only the cowardly humans were willing to face this challenge, in their own careful way. "Very well," First Speaker Marcus declared. "Captain Reed, how soon can your ship be ready?" Reed checked his tablet one more time. "We'll need 3 days to gather additional shielding materials and calibrate our sensors for the specific energy signatures. We'll also need full access to all historical data about the Gamma sector and any information about the ancient weapon system." More murmurs filled the chamber, but this time they were thoughtful rather than mocking. The First Speaker's crystals glowed in agreement. "You shall have whatever you need. The Galactic Council officially assigns this mission to the Earth exploration vessel Prudence." As the meeting adjourned, Captain Reed was already sending messages to his crew, beginning their meticulous preparation process. The warrior races might mock their methods, but at least the humans were willing to step up when needed, even if they did so cautiously. The fate of multiple star systems now rested in the hands of those the galaxy called cowards. But perhaps, just perhaps, this situation called for exactly their kind of courage. The crew of the Prudence spent the next 2 weeks in intense preparation, much to the frustration of the Galactic Council. While the ancient weapon's energy readings continued to climb, Captain Reed refused to rush. Another delay. The first speaker's message flashed on the main screen of the Prudence. The warrior races are mocking us for choosing humans. They say you are stalling out of fear. Better they mock us than mourn us. Engineer Mike Williams muttered as he double-checked his equipment. He was installing backup systems that other species considered outdated. Simple mechanical controls that could work even if their main computers failed. The ship's storage areas were packed with emergency supplies, spare parts, and backup gear. First Officer Lisa Brown walked through the cargo bay, checking items off her list. She had created 15 different emergency plans, each designed to handle a different type of crisis. Our shields are at 300% normal strength, Mike reported, wiping sweat from his forehead. I've added 3 layers of radiation protection. The aliens think we're crazy for using so much shielding, but I'd rather be called crazy than dead. In the ship's laboratory, Dr. Ray Peters studied historical data about the Gamma sector. He discovered that 3 previous expeditions had tried to reach the weapons system. All 3 had rushed in boldly, and none had returned. Look at this, he called to Captain Reed, pointing at his screen. The last expedition's final message mentioned strange energy patterns affecting their ship's biology sensors. None of the warrior races reported this in their mission briefings, because they didn't bother to look. Reed replied, shaking his head. They were too busy proving their courage to notice important details. The Prudence's preparation went far beyond just gathering equipment. The crew spent hours in the simulator, practicing emergency procedures. They ran through every possible disaster they could think of, from power failures to hull breaches. Lisa organized the crew into emergency response teams. If something goes wrong, she explained during a briefing, everyone needs to know exactly what to do. We won't have time to make plans in the middle of a crisis. Even the ship's kitchen was part of the preparation. We're stocking extra food and water, the cook explained to a visiting council member. And yes, we have backup systems for the food processors. The warrior races might think it's cowardly to worry about eating, but hungry crews make mistakes. 2 days before their scheduled departure, Mike installed his latest creation, a manual override system for the ship's engines. The aliens think I'm crazy for adding primitive controls, he told Captain Reed. But when advanced systems fail, sometimes the old ways work best. The Council's messages became more urgent each day. The weapon's energy readings had doubled, and strange signals were now coming from the Gamma sector. But Reed stood firm about completing their preparation. I understand the Council's worry, he told his crew during their final briefing. But rushing and unprepared would just add our names to the list of failed missions. We do this right, or we don't do it at all. On the morning of their departure, the Prudence looked very different from the sleek warships that usually handled dangerous missions. Extra armor plates covered its hull. Antenna arrays for the backup communication systems stuck out at odd angles. Storage pods full of emergency supplies were attached to its sides. It looks like a floating junkyard, one alien observer commented as the ship prepared to leave the station. The warrior races would never fly in something so ugly. Maybe that's why they're not flying at all, Lisa replied with a slight smile. She had overheard the comment while making her final checks. Beauty won't matter much in the Gamma sector. As the Prudence finally left the station, Captain Reed looked at his well-prepared crew and ship. Others might see their caution as cowardice, but he knew better. True courage wasn't about rushing blindly into danger. It was about facing danger intelligently. All stations report ready, Lisa announced from her post. All backup systems are online. All emergency procedures have been tested and verified. Very well, Reed said, sitting in his captain's chair. Let's show the galaxy how cowards handle a crisis. Set course for the Gamma sector. Standard safe speed. The Prudence moved away from the station, carrying a crew that had chosen preparation over pride. They might be called cowards, but they were ready for whatever waited in the Gamma sector. And that was what really mattered. The Prudence dropped out of faster-than-light travel at a safe distance from the Gamma sector's edge. The ship's sensors immediately lit up with warning signals. Strange energy patterns filled the space ahead of them, dancing like angry lightning across their screens. Previous ships tried to push straight through, Captain Reed said, studying the main display. That's why they failed. We're going to be smarter about this. Instead of moving closer, the Prudence launched its first wave of probe drones. These small, unmanned devices would test the dangerous space ahead. The warrior races had called such tactics cowardly, but Reed knew better. First drone is sending data, Lisa announced from her station. Her screen filled with readings. Radiation levels are even higher than we expected. The last expedition's ships would have been fried in minutes. Mike watched from engineering as the first drone suddenly stopped transmitting. Lost contact with drone 1, he reported. Something out there killed it. Good thing it wasn't us testing those waters. The crew launched more drones, each programmed to follow a different path. One by one, they watched as the machines encountered various dangers. Some were destroyed by radiation, others by strange energy fields. But each failure taught them something new. Look at this pattern, Ray said, pointing to his screen. The doctor had noticed something in the data. The energy readings spike just before each drone dies. It's like something is targeting them. Reed leaned forward in his chair. Show me those readings again, he ordered. The crew spent the next hour analyzing the data. While other species might have grown impatient, the humans knew that understanding was their best weapon. Captain, Ray called out suddenly. I think I see what's happening. The weapon system isn't just shooting randomly. It's detecting life signs, or trying to. The drones with more complex electronic systems get targeted first. This was the breakthrough they needed. The ancient weapon was designed to attack living things. The previous expeditions, filled with living crews, had never stood a chance. Launch the passive probe, Reed ordered. This drone was different, stripped down to minimal systems, barely more than a camera with an engine. They watched as it moved deeper into the dangerous space than any previous probe. It's working, Lisa said excitedly. The weapon's defenses aren't seeing it. We're getting our first clear pictures of the target. The main screen filled with images of a massive structure floating in space. It was clearly artificial, but unlike anything they had seen before. Energy pulses rippled across its surface in complex patterns. Those patterns, Ray muttered, staring at the screen. They look almost like, of course. It's not just a weapon. It's trying to communicate. The crew gathered around Ray's station as he explained his theory. The energy patterns weren't random attacks. They were a language written in radiation and power pulses. The weapon was demanding something, but all the living crews that approached had been killed before they could understand the message. Send the data to the linguists, Reed ordered. But keep the ship at safe distance. We're not taking any unnecessary risks. A message from the Galactic Council flashed on their screen. Have you made contact with the weapon yet? Other species are questioning your slow approach. Reed smiled as he sent his reply. We've made more progress in 6 hours than 3 previous expeditions. Sometimes slow and steady wins the race. The Council's response was immediate. Explain. We've discovered why the weapon attacks. Reed wrote back. We've gotten closer than anyone else. And most importantly, we're all still alive to report our findings. As the crew continued their careful observations, Mike spoke up from his engineering station. You know what the funny thing is? Everyone calls us cowards, but we're the only ones who dared to come out here at all. Lisa nodded. True courage isn't about rushing in. It's about facing danger intelligently. Keep the probes going, Reed ordered. We'll solve this puzzle piece by piece. The galaxy may be in a hurry, but we'll do this right. The Prudence maintained its position at a safe distance, its crew methodically gathering data. They might be called cowards, but they were the only ones making real progress. The ancient weapons mystery was slowly unfolding before them, proving that sometimes the cautious approach was the bravest one of all. After 3 days of careful study, the Prudence's crew gathered in the main conference room. The wall screens showed their collected data about the ancient weapon system. Ray had spent hours analyzing the energy patterns, and he finally had a theory to share. "It's not just a weapon," he explained, pointing to the swirling patterns on the screen. "It's an automated quarantine system. These energy pulses are warning messages about some ancient disease." Captain Reed leaned forward in his chair. "So it's not trying to destroy nearby systems. It's trying to protect them." "Exactly," Ray nodded. "The system activates when it detects certain biological patterns. That's why it attacks living crews but mostly ignores our simpler drones. It thinks it's containing a plague." Lisa pulled up the historical data they'd gathered. "That explains why the warrior races failed. They charged in with ships full of life signs, and the system did what it was designed to do: stop biological threats from spreading." The crew sat quietly for a moment, processing this information. Their cautious approach had revealed what countless brave warriors had died without discovering. But knowing the truth wasn't enough. They still had to find a way to shut down the system before its growing energy field affected populated worlds. "I have an idea," Mike said from his engineering station. "If the system targets biological signatures, what if we fool it? We could create false readings that show the space around it is already quarantined, like putting up a keep out sign that's already there." Lisa added, catching on to the idea. "Make it think its job is already done." Reed nodded slowly. "How long to set up the equipment?" "Give me 6 hours," Mike replied. "I'll need to modify our probe drones to broadcast the right kind of signals." The Galactic Council, as usual, was impatient for action. When Reed explained their plan, the response was skeptical. "More delays, more careful preparations. The warrior races are saying humans lack the courage to act." "Tell them preparation isn't cowardice," Reed responded. "It's how we'll succeed where their courage failed." Mike worked through his shift and into the next, modifying their remaining drones. He installed special transmitters that would broadcast false biological containment signals, basically telling the ancient system that its job was already complete. "Ready for first test," he announced finally, launching modified Drone 7. The crew watched tensely as the drone approached the weapon system. Unlike previous attempts, this time the energy weapons didn't immediately fire. The drone got closer than anything had before. "It's working," Lisa exclaimed. "The system isn't seeing the drone as a threat. It thinks that area is already under quarantine." Step by step, they expanded their false quarantine zone. Each drone added its signal to the others, creating a web of deception that fooled the ancient system. The weapon's energy readings began to decrease for the first time since it had activated. "Now comes the tricky part," Reed said. "We need to convince it that the whole sector is contained so it can power down." It took another full day of careful work. They lost 2 drones to unexpected energy surges, but they didn't rush. Each setback was studied, each problem solved methodically. The warrior races would have seen it as wasted time, but the humans knew better. Finally, the weapon's energy field began to shrink. Its warnings about biological threats faded. The quarantine system, convinced its job was complete, started to power down. "Send word to the council," Reed ordered. "Tell them the threat is nearly contained, and remind them that sometimes the patient path is the successful path." The response from the council was immediate. "The warrior races send their congratulations, though they still question your methods." "Tell them we question their rush to die needlessly," Mike muttered, but not loud enough for the message to pick up. Lisa smiled at her console. "You know what's really funny? We succeeded because we were willing to look cowardly. Any other species would have been too proud to trick the system instead of fighting it." "That's the difference," Reed agreed. "True strength isn't about showing off your courage. It's about getting the job done, no matter what others think of your methods. As the ancient weapon system continued to power down, the crew of the Prudence began their final checks. They would stay until they were absolutely certain the danger was past. Other species might call it excess caution, but the humans called it responsibility. Their cowardly approach had succeeded where brave warriors had failed. Sometimes, it seemed, the galaxy needed fewer heroes and more careful thinkers. Just as the crew of the Prudence thought their mission was nearly complete, warning alarms blared through the ship. The ancient weapon system wasn't just powering down, it was starting to malfunction. Energy readings are spiking. Lisa called out from her station. The containment field is becoming unstable. If it collapses, the radiation burst could affect 3 nearby systems. Captain Reed quickly assessed the situation. The weapons core was overheating, threatening to explode. Their clever trick had worked too well. The system was shutting down incorrectly, like an old computer crashing during an update. "How long do we have?" Reed asked, keeping his voice calm despite the crisis. Ray checked his readings. "Maybe 6 hours before the core goes critical. The good news is, I think I know how to prevent it. The bad news is, someone needs to go inside the station." The crew fell silent. After all their careful work using drones and remote systems, they now faced the need for direct human intervention. The very thing they had tried so hard to avoid was now their only option. The warrior races would already be suiting up, Mike said quietly. They'd call this their moment of glory. Reed nodded. Maybe. But they'd also probably be dead in minutes. "We're going to do this our way." Lisa called the Galactic Council. "We're requesting backup." The Council was surprised by the request. No other species had ever asked for help during a crucial mission. They considered it a matter of pride to handle dangerous situations alone. "It will take 3 hours for the nearest ship to reach you," the Council responded. "The warrior races are offering to send their fastest vessels." "No," Reed interrupted. "We need the Earth vessel Caution. They're 4 hours away, but they have the equipment we need. Better to wait for the right help than rush in with the wrong tools." While they waited, the crew didn't sit idle. They used the remaining drones to gather detailed scans of the weapon's interior. Mike worked on modifying their radiation suits, adding extra layers of protection. Ray studied the system's power fluctuations, looking for patterns they could use. "The warrior races are sending messages," Lisa reported. "They say we're showing cowardice by waiting for help. That real heroes would act now." "Real heroes don't get their crews killed for pride," Reed replied. "Tell them we're showing something better than courage. We're showing sense." When the Caution arrived, its crew brought specialized equipment they had prepared during their flight. Both ships' engineers worked together, combining their tools and ideas to build something new. "We've got 3 layers of protection," Mike explained, showing the modified suits. "If the first layer fails, the second takes over. If that fails, the third gives us time to retreat." The warrior races would laugh at such caution. "The warrior races aren't here," Reed reminded him. "We are, and we're going to do this right." The plan they developed was complex but careful. Teams of 2 would enter the weapons system, each backed up by another team ready to help. They would work in short shifts, minimizing radiation exposure. Every step would be monitored, every movement planned. "This is taking too long," the Council messaged as they made their final preparations. "The warrior races say." Reed cut off the transmission. "We don't need their opinions. We need to focus." The first team entered the weapons system an hour later. They moved slowly, checking their equipment constantly. When their radiation exposure reached 40% of the safe limit, they retreated, letting the next team take over. Step by step, they worked their way toward the core. 2 teams had to turn back when their primary radiation shields failed, but their backup systems protected them. The very caution that others mocked was keeping them alive. "We're reaching the critical point," Lisa announced. "Core temperature is still rising. Next team needs to move faster." "No," Reed said firmly. We maintain our pace. Better to take an extra minute than make a fatal mistake. That's the human way. As the crisis point approached, the crew of the Prudence stood by their methods. They had been called cowards for requesting help, for taking precautions, for working slowly. But they were still alive, still working, still solving the problem. Sometimes, true courage meant being willing to look like a coward in order to get the job done right. The combined crews of the Prudence and Caution worked steadily inside the ancient weapon system. Every team followed the careful plans they had made. The core temperature was still rising, but they refused to panic or rush. Final team reaching the central chamber. Lisa reported from her monitoring station. The screen showed two figures in heavily modified protection suits moving carefully through the glowing corridors. Mike from engineering watched the radiation readings climb. "They've got 18 minutes before their primary shields fail," he said. "The warrior races would run in and try to fix everything in 5 minutes. And they'd fail," Reed replied calmly. "Our way takes longer, but it works." Inside the weapons system, the team reached the core control room. Engineers Tom and Bill moved carefully, checking every step. Their suit cameras sent back clear images of the ancient technology. "Look at these markings," Tom said, his voice calm despite the danger. "They match the patterns we studied. This isn't just a weapon. It's a complete biological defense system." While Tom studied the controls, Bill set up their equipment. They had practiced this procedure 20 times in simulations. Now, with real danger all around them, they'd followed the same careful steps. Core temperature rising faster, Lisa warned. 14 minutes to shield failure. The Council's message flashed on their screens. "The warrior races have ships standing by. They offer to attempt a direct intervention." "No," Reed replied firmly. "We're already inside. We're handling this." In the control room, Tom found what they were looking for, the main control panel. But instead of rushing to shut it down, he double-checked everything against their prepared plans. "Beginning shutdown sequence," he reported. "Bill, confirm my readings." This double-checking was another thing the warrior races would have skipped, but the humans knew that one mistake could be fatal. "Readings confirmed," Bill replied. "Starting backup power system first, just like in practice." Step by step, they worked through their shutdown list. Nothing was rushed. Nothing was skipped. Even with time running out, they maintained their careful approach. 10 minutes to shield failure, Lisa announced. The core's glow started to dim as the shutdown sequence continued. But suddenly, warning lights flashed across the control panel. "Power spike," Tom called out. "The core is fighting the shutdown." In the past, this kind of surprise would have doomed a warrior race's mission. They would have had no backup plan, no way to adapt. But the humans had prepared for problems. "Switching to Plan C," Bill said calmly. They had practiced for this too. While Tom kept the main controls stable, Bill connected their backup system. 7 minutes to shield failure, Lisa reported. The core's resistance was expected. They had seen something similar in their simulations. The humans had planned for it, prepared for it, and now they were ready to handle it. "We're routing power through our backup," Bill announced. "Tom, start the secondary shutdown sequence." Their careful preparation paid off. The core's power levels began to drop steadily. The dangerous energy buildup started to fade. "It's working," Lisa reported. "Core temperature falling. Radiation levels dropping." In the control room, Tom and Bill continued their methodical work. They didn't celebrate early. They didn't rush. They completed every step of their shutdown procedure, just as they had practiced. "Final sequence complete," Tom reported finally. "Core is stable. System is closed down." The crews of both ships broke into quiet cheers. They had done it, not with bold heroics or dramatic actions, but with careful planning and steady work. "The warrior races are sending congratulations," Lisa said, checking her messages. "Though they still say we took too long and showed too much caution." "Tell them we took exactly as long as we needed," Reed replied. and we're all still alive to tell about it. As the teams began their careful exit from the weapons system, Reed sent his own message to the Council. Mission accomplished. The human way worked. Sometimes, the careful path is the best path. The ancient weapon was finally quiet. Its threat ended not by bold warriors rushing in, but by careful humans who weren't afraid to take their time and do things right. You know what the best part is? Mike said, watching the teams return. We can teach others how we did this. Our careful methods can be learned. Being reckless only teaches others how to die. 1 month after the successful shutdown of the ancient weapon, Captain Reed stood before the Galactic Council. The Great Hall was packed with representatives from every spacefaring race, including the warrior species who had once mocked human caution. Tell us, first speaker Marcus said, his crystalline form glowing with interest, how does it feel to have succeeded where the bravest warriors failed? Reed looked around the room before answering. We didn't succeed because we were better, he said carefully. We succeeded because we were willing to appear cowardly in order to do things right. The hall buzzed with conversation. Many of the warrior races shifted uncomfortably in their seats as Reed continued. Our ships didn't look impressive. Our methods seemed slow. We asked for help when we needed it. We spent more time planning than acting. By traditional standards, we looked like cowards every step of the way. Yet you saved 3 star systems, the first speaker noted. Your cowardly approach prevented a disaster. Reed nodded. Because true courage isn't about looking brave. It's about getting the job done, no matter what others think of your methods. From their seats in the gallery, the crew of the Prudence watched with pride. They had been called cowards for their careful approach, but now the galaxy was seeing things differently. The Council has reviewed your mission logs, Marcus announced. Your preparation, your careful progress, your willingness to wait for proper help instead of rushing in. These things have taught us something important. Lisa leaned over to Mike in the gallery and whispered, Are the warrior races actually paying attention? They were. The mighty lions of Proxima, who had refused the mission as too dangerous, were taking notes. The Steel Claws, famous for their bold attacks, were studying the humans' safety protocols. We have a request, Marcus continued. The Council would like Earth to establish a training program. We want other species to learn your methods of careful planning and calculated risk assessment. This was unprecedented. Warrior races never admitted they needed to learn from others, especially not from those they considered cowardly. There's more, Marcus added. We've detected similar energy signatures in the Beta Quadrant. The Council would like humans to lead the investigation. Reed looked up at his crew, then back at the Council. We'd be honored, he said, but we'll do it our way, with full preparation, proper equipment, and no rushing in just to look brave. We would expect nothing less, Marcus replied, and there was respect in his tone. After the session, the crew gathered in a quiet corner of the Council station. They had received medals, not for bravery in battle, but for excellence in crisis management, a new category created just for them. You know what's funny? Mike said, looking at his medal. A month ago, they called us cowards for wanting backup systems. Now they're asking us to teach them about redundant safety protocols. Because they finally understand, Lisa added. Courage comes in many forms. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is take your time and ask for help. The next day, as the Prudence prepared to leave for its new mission, Reed noticed something interesting. The warrior race ships docked nearby had begun installing additional safety systems. Some had even requested human engineering advisors. Captain, Lisa called from her station, you should see these new mission requests coming in. Everyone wants human crews for their dangerous missions now. They're actually asking for our cowardly approach by name. Reed smiled as he settled into his captain's chair. The galaxy was learning that there were different kinds of courage. The courage to look foolish while doing things right. The courage to ask for help. The courage to take things slowly when others demanded speed. Set course for the Beta Quadrant, he ordered. Standard safe speed, full sensor sweep ahead of us. Let's show them how humans handle a crisis. As the Prudence moved away from the station, other ships watched with new respect. The humans might always double-check their systems, plan for every possibility, and take the careful path. But they got the job done. Sometimes it seemed the galaxy needed fewer heroes and more careful thinkers, and the humans were proud to show them how it was done. You know what? Mike said from his engineering station. Being called a coward isn't so bad when you're alive to hear it. The crew laughed, and the Prudence headed out into space, ready to face new challenges, carefully, methodically, and in their own human way.